Hey there, podcast peeps. Welcome to another episode of the Age Groupie podcast, part of the United WeCast network. I'm Lindsay Heiken, and along with my co-host Mike Ergo, I'm here to talk to you about all things related to endurance sports from an amateur athlete perspective, about living that multi-sport lifestyle, and to share the other random thoughts that pop into our heads. You can follow the show on Instagram at Age Groupies, join our Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name Lindsay Heiken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have questions, comments, or topic ideas, feel free to email us at agegroupies@gmail.com. And if you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. So today is a solo interview between myself and my good friend Heidi Buttery. Heidi's been on the show before. She's a nutritionist and 3-time Ironman triathlete. When Heidi was on the show before, we talked mostly about nutrition relating to endurance sports and racing. So training and racing. And this time I had Heidi on to share her why, her personal why for participating in the sport of triathlon, because she has an amazing inspirational story and a lot of good information to share. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Heidi Buttery about her why. Okay, so today on the Age Groupies podcast, I have my friend Heidi. You guys would remember her from early when I started the podcast. She came on two different episodes, mostly talking about nutrition because she is a nutritionist. She's also a 3-time Ironman triathlete and ultra distance runner and a bunch of other awesome stuff. But what I really wanted to do, and by the way, if you hear my dogs barking, I'm just going to apologize right now. They've been quiet all morning and I just heard one of them go off. But so I wanted to talk to Heidi about her why for racing because she's got a pretty inspirational story and I thought it would be awesome to share it with you guys. So Heidi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you both, Lindsay and Mike, who isn't part of the conversation, but awesome addition.
Yeah. Yes, Mike is off doing Mike stuff today. Probably carrying heavy backpacks through the forest or something like that.
He's probably planning your next big obstacle course or something like that.
Seriously, he's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your background and how you I think we kind of covered this before, but I want to go a little deeper, like how you got into endurance sports. Let's just start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So bringing up the question of why, Lindsay, remember our coach Tim at Ironman Santa Rosa meeting before our big race, and he said, tapping into your why is super important. So I love the fact that you're having more people talk about it because it really is what you'll return to, I think, when you get into those dark places on the race course.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've been doing triathlon for about 8 years now. So I feel like, I've had good experiences, challenging experiences over the years, but kind of enough to just start talking about this. And my why is actually, I would say, trifold, to put a little humor into it, but it involves my struggles with mental health issues, as well as reconnecting to community and how important that is as part of my why. And as cheesy as it is, love. So I've written, about this before, and I'm just super excited because I think every time I think about my why, it really does kind of change and roll into the next big race.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So feel free to cut in or ask me to clarify.
Well, okay. So trifold. So
yes.
So first of all, let's just start small. What was your first race? You're literally okay, I'm going to do a triathlon. What precipitated that?
So that came from actually moving from San Francisco to the peninsula and seeing sunshine. And my husband had bought me this hybrid bike, and I was like, I'm never going to be on a road bike. And I would spend the evening sort of photographing the bay and just being out for an hour, which felt like forever. So it was kind of from there where I was like, okay, let's up the ante. I don't know how to swim, but triathlon could be fun.
That's awesome. And at this point, you weren't really connecting it with mental health stuff in terms of, trying to lead a healthier life, or were you already connecting physical activity with some of the mental health stuff?
Yeah. So I wasn't really seeing, like, before I had gotten my bike, a big part of my healing process from getting some serious mental health issues was physical. It was hiking. And when I got on my bike, it was really just about joy. And I sort of didn't second guess it. It was
That's
just
awesome.
kind of like, yeah, like a natural progression.
Yeah, well, you are quite good on the bike, so I can see that. So as much as you're comfortable with sharing in terms of the mental health, like, could we have a little background of that and kind of dive into that a little bit? Because I know that there are a lot of people who, and myself included, I've shared, struggle with a variety of mental health challenges. And I know when we see, like, for any listeners who've gone to Heidi's Instagram, you can go look at IG Ultra Heidi or Nutrition by Heidi. You don't see a person that you would associate, quote unquote, with mental health issues. You see this, like, beautiful woman who's got a beautiful family and running and this beautiful trail pictures and making great food. And I think there was a point in my own struggles where when I look at people like that, I would go, they don't have any issues, but I'm a mess, but look at this person. And so I think it's nice to be able to share, that maybe what we see on Instagram isn't the whole picture, basically.
Yes, Linz, exactly to that point. Instagram, it really is about the Instagrammable life. And I know I've joked with you about #Failure Fridays, and I still haven't put yet a photo of my son eating mac and cheese, and the dishes are all over the place. So, it certainly happens. But I really thought about this. It's taken me 10 years since, I would say, the significant event that sort of catapulted my journey. And it really is a managing of this, which I'll share with you, that I think is super important. And both you and Mike have brought this up, and I think we could do another episode down the line about managing your issues. But I think for me, it fuels my fire, like, up until today. So I think it's important to share.
Okay, awesome. So dive in wherever you want and kind of just give us the background, or how much you're willing to share. Whatever you feel comfortable with is good with me.
Sure. So, I talked about my why being sort of trifold. I think my health issue, which really started in 2009 when I became aware and diagnosed of my condition. But when I really drill down, this is like, my why is to be strongly in the game of life and the game of health. So first time I'm sharing this on a platform. So thank you for letting me share it. So back in 2009, I was hospitalized. I'm sure everyone's heard of bipolar disorder. We kind of make fun of it. And I had kind of dealt with bouts of depression before that. But if someone's going off the deep end, you're like, oh, are they bipolar? I mean, I've had it.
Oh, exactly.
in the endurance space, sort of the more ultra you get, you kind of joke with yourself, like, okay, I'm really crazy now,
Right. Yeah,
exactly. So I think I connect with that totally.
Same.
So I had mentioned I was living in San Francisco, and then I moved to the peninsula and found my bike and found my hobby and love with triathlon. But when this happened, I was working a ton of hours in the city. I didn't know that my family history included a few individuals that had dealt with this issue, because it's stigmatized quite often.
Yeah, I wanted to break in there and just say that that's an experience I think a lot of people have with various mental illness challenges, bipolar, addiction, and alcoholism, where the mental illness itself has such a stigma to it. Although I think fortunately less now, but it's hard to know the family history because no one wanted to talk about it. Everyone would sweep it under the rug, and so then if you're a person like myself who is predisposed to having something, it's like you may not even know that it's a potential danger for you, or just that it's a potential thing that could happen because all the previous generations, acted like nothing happened ever.
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. And, I look back 10 years ago. I mean, it's taken me 10 years to just say this out and like not care about it so much, but I was doing the perfect storm. Like if there was a book on how to have a manic episode, I was doing it all. I was hanging out with friends late. I was working 12, 13, 14-hour days. I was drinking coffee at 10 p.m. and, doing all of this to keep my body awake. So I could definitely dive into that. But what had happened is I was hospitalized. I was put into I was inpatient for 6 days, May 14th, 2009, day of bike to work. So I always like when I see that someone carrying that. So, you remember these historical dates.
That's amazing.
And so I was like, wow, what is this? And let me say, for someone who deals with mania, depression, mania is a much more fun part. It's super anxious, but you're euphoric. I was put into a high functioning group. So I was like, pat on the back. I'm crazy, but
I'm functioning.
but I'm functioning. So I was inpatient hospitalized, and then I was outpatient for 3.5 weeks. And in that process, I made the decision to quit my job. I knew it wasn't good for me at the time. And over the next couple of months, I really withdrew from friends. I would try to figure out, I was had turned 27. I didn't know what this meant and fell into a deep depression. So I was interviewed by Ironman, and I can provide that link because it sort of, so it picks up at that particular point. I've raced for the #green ribbon, made up my own campaign around it, but that's the significance. So coming out of this depression, during the time, trying medications, putting on weight, feeling terrible, not connecting to anyone. But slowly I got back on I was never huge in exercise, but I got on the elliptical machine, got a new job, moved to the peninsula, and then we can kind of pick it up with the bike there.
That's amazing.
That's a little background on that.
And I think it's important to note some of the things that you said about like, first of all, you didn't even know what you were dealing with, when you first started getting help for it. It's like, you just don't even know what's happening. And then also just that process of like, that you kind of described of having to try different treatments and things, to get to a place where you can move forward. And I think that is something that is important to know. It's like, for me, exercise, and as you said, is a big part of my staying healthy, not only physically, but mentally, dealing with my, my alcoholism and, but before you can get to that point of the maintenance, like you said, we'll do a maintenance someday with Mike too, but you've got to go through that process of like eliminating things that don't work and trying new things that do work and staying open to that process. And that can be, challenging to do in the midst of having like sort of somewhat crisis mode of having a mental health issue come up. So it's commendable that you were able to do it. Not everyone's successful at it at first, but I just want people to be clear if they are experiencing something, there's not like, it may just be a process that you have to go through to get to the other side, and that's okay.
Right. And I mean, it really is those micro movements that are super hard to kind of roll into the next. And I think too, something I want to point out is, fast forward to the hybrid bike and then finding Team Sheeper. It's not like I'm healed from it. It's kind of, as you said, a managing, because I don't think we're ever completely healed from our mental or health issues, but it's sort of a maintenance.
It seems like, and I don't know if this is true for all mental health issues or not. I know that for stuff I deal with, stuff you deal with, and a lot of people that I know that have various mental health issues, it's a disease, whatever it is, more similar to like diabetes than it is to something that you could have a surgery and correct. And literally, I mean, 'cause there are illnesses, physical illnesses that we get that's like, oh, I had a surgery and now I'm back to like, basically restored to my original health. That it's not that kind of illness. It usually is there for life, like like diabetes would be, diabetic one, and requires maintenance and vigilance, basically forever. I mean, throughout your lifetime.
Right.
Yeah, that's something to note, because I think the human, at least especially for people who are like type A or perfectionism, we want to fix the thing and be done with it. It's like, that is not this.
Exactly. And even crossing my first Ironman finish line, I mean, it changed my life in so many ways, but I hit lows after that. I mean, some of the lows I kind of came up against about a year before Ironman Santa Rosa. And one of my whys that I kind of want to trickle into is just the power of your tribe and community. Because for me, I had always pushed that away. I never felt super supported by a particular community. My family has always supported me, and just getting through those rough patches after my initial diagnosis, like my husband, who I mean, he was literally just there every day. And I mean, I know for him, like, it must have been, it took a physical and mental toll on him. But we both learned from it and we both grew.
Yeah.
But I have to say, because I am definitely a silver linings person.
Yeah.
And one of the super fun things for me was after this health issue to return to San Francisco in the athletic space. And I would, one in particular race that I remember is, so after I was diagnosed, I had quit my regular job, and eventually I started volunteering in the Tenderloin, and just trying to get back. And I would volunteer for the what do you call it, Salvation Army, and help people there. And I would walk. It wasn't very far, but I was so defeated mentally that I would take a bus on the way back, because it meant going up like 2 hills. Like I couldn't even, and so then I returned with the team, doing like first a 10K and then the Urbanathlon. And I was just like tearing it up, and like that just lit my heart.
Okay, people, Heidi has done the Dipsy Quad and is doing it again this year, which is the Dipsy Trail from up and over to Stinson and then back, and then so 4 up and over and then back up and over. And so to hear you say that you take a bus because it was 2 hills is just unfreaking believable.
I know. And some of the lovely souls that I had met on my journey in different support groups told me that, and this was important for me to kind of get over, that, okay, I could get a discount on a bus pass because I had a serious mental health issue. And I sat in front, Lindsay, and honestly, like, if you believe that like that takes precedence, then it can really cave you down. So I had to like get over that, and like I didn't. So I would sit in the front of the bus to go up the 2 blocks.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So that's so coming back and doing the Urbanathlon is like kind of similar to my experience of riding Ironman Santa Rosa through the vineyards, where it's like, okay, my life is in a completely different place now, and it feels so good, right? Okay, so let's pick up. You're on the bike here, you're at Sunshine, and you thought, let me try. And so did you come to Team Sheeper right away when you decided to try a triathlon, or how did that come about?
Initially, I came to the pool to basically flush around the lanes, because what had happened is I signed up for a sprint, and I was like, oh, like I'll make all this up. So I was like, well, I literally did not know how to swim, and I actually doggy paddled CJ and Try. Like and so it was in Pleasanton, but
it's in the rock quarry there. It's like,
oh my gosh, I was like, it's 400 yards, and you and I partnered for like, what did we, 10,000 yards? So I'm like, if I can doggy paddle.
Yeah, we did 10 miles of swimming total in one day together.
Yeah, right. So when people have excuses, I'm like, please.
Yeah.
But after that, I kind of did the similar thing that a lot of people do when they do their first triathlon. They think, okay, that's like tick, I've done a triathlon, or like, I got to do that again. And I have to say, when I finished that swim and I was like, yep, panic attack behind me and I can't breathe because I'm trying to bike, but like biking along that, like I will never forget Ironman finish lines, but I will also never forget that first bike for me. It was so connecting to something bigger. So after that, I was like, okay, I don't like swimming, or like, I'm still scared of it, but I want to do something huge, like crazy, like a 70.3. And so then I discovered Vineman, because I'm like, I can basically stand up, which
which is very helpful. Back in the day, you could just walk straight down the river if you wanted to.
Exactly. But then after joining Team Sheeper, because I joined them to kind of get the skills, I'm like, our coach said, you guys better not walk. Drag your, and to this day, I think drag the fingertips at the bottom. Do not put your feet on the ground.
In full disclosure, I stood up during that race one time, and it was not to walk, but it was because there was a guy who was coming up behind me who was a fast swimmer, and he hit my feet, then my calves, then he was just hitting me. And as he was swimming up, going to swim over me, and it's too shallow for him to swim over me, right? I just stood up and put my foot on his midsection and just shoved him away from me.
Hey, a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do.
It's like, get out of my freaking, exactly. Oh my gosh. So, okay. So you are kind of like, now you're in a place where you've identified the mental health stuff. You're kind of, you've been treated for that. You're working with that. You've done a small triathlon. You are, you've joined Team Sheeper to do a bigger stretch goal. And so I'm guessing this is where some of the other whys come into place. Is that right?
Absolutely. So I am the type of athlete, and I think you may follow me on this as well, so I've got a big goal ahead of me. For me at that time, it was the 70.3, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, because I am someone, Lynn's, like during that healing period and getting the bike, I threw a 5K, and I'm like, I am never racing a 10K. 6 miles? Like, are these? So with every goal kind of put me in this bigger headspace of possibility. And before I had finished my 70.3, I had signed up. Two of our teammates, Mary and David Posey, urged me to sign up for Ironman Coeur d'Alene. And I'm the type of person where years ago in Barnes and Noble, probably 15 years ago, I saw a book that says you can be an Ironman. I'm like, and I was like, no way. Right. But I think it's important because, in thinking about tribe and what the community means to me, seeing other people's goals, it can like really motivate you. So I had signed up for my first Ironman.
Awesome. And the thing about community too, is that it makes, you see other people's goals, it's motivating, but it also makes things attainable, because you can look around in the team. Of course, our team has a lot of really talented athletes that are fast, but it also has regular people on the team. And so for me, I was able to look around and go, oh, well, if that person did a 70.3 or an Ironman, I could probably do it too, right? Because we run together every Sunday or ride together every Saturday, and I can do what they're doing, on training. So that's the other piece, is just kind of making things more attainable, at least in my mind.
Exactly. Or I see this person doing 5 Ironman in 5 day. I have to say, I heard Mel's interview, and I was part of Epic 5. I still am in a capacity, but when you start sort of trickling in the Ironman, the ultra, you and I got these ultra runs on our calendar, and side note about this, I was like, big part of my why is like, I feel like I'm capable of it. And you gave me David Goggins' book, and I have to say, no friggin' excuses.
I love that guy.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that is the other thing. It's like you start realizing, I can do a lot, but I didn't think I could do. And instead of taking that path of getting the discounted bus fare, and kind of making
Yes.
your life small of like, well, I have this challenge now, this mental illness, so I better just, get this cheap bus pass, and just, that you've chosen the other alternative of kind of seeing how big you could go, which I think is, it's inspirational for me too, because then you're trying to do stuff way longer than anything I want to do, but it does push me to be like, oh, well, if Heidi's going to go do Ultraman, I mean, I guess I could probably put another Ironman on my calendar at some point or something,
Yes, that is on my my bucket list to get down to. And I was gonna say, often we're like, a big reason people do things is like to be a better person than the day they were the day before. And I think for me, like that concept exists, but it's also to be stronger. Like, I've been getting really into my yoga and HIIT classes, and I'm telling you, like, listening to Beyonce, Jay-Z, Rihanna, I'm I'm in this. And so it doesn't have to be an Ironman. I mean, I was like 26-minute class, and I'm just jamming and I'm sweating, and I'm like, this is awesome.
Love it.
So
yes, HIIT is good. I love these HIIT workouts, and I'm starting to do them too. And I'm actually noticing such a huge improvement. It's amazing. So
yes,
it's amazing.
It will flow. So I was going to say, after Coeur d'Alene and finishing my first Ironman, I would say I was kind of on the up for a really long time. And I did, can't think right now, Ironman Cozumel and the Green Ribbon campaign. And then I had my son, which, as you know, if you are exposed or if you are susceptible to mental illness, have experienced it, postpartum comes in there, and it's kind of inevitable things. And I'm really happy I chose to follow the path of a family, because when I was in my 20s, I'm like, I can't take care of myself. I built these truths up, and which weren't true. And now he's like the biggest part of my life. And
oh my gosh, he's such a character too.
He's a little. Hey, I got a shout out to Aiden because he got his first podium.
Yes, he did. He was
on his tricycle. So,
and I think I've shared before on the podcast, but I'm not sure. But Aiden came and spectated a trail race you and I did this summer, and when we were done, he's 3, so he's used to, and he's got Heidi for a mom, and he's used to, and Paul does endurance sports too, his dad. So he just thinks this is the way that everyone lives. And we saw these women hiking in the park. This is when our race was done, and they weren't running because they're just hikers. And Aiden smacked one of them on the bum and was like, "Go!" because he thought she should be running.
He said, "Go faster."
Oh, go faster. That's right.
Go faster. I
love it. So good.
So, it's funny, in the whole wake of this Me Too movement and women treated with respect, it's like, sometimes I feel like one of my biggest opportunities is to show him, like, he thinks of me as super mama. And so he sees me speeding all over the place. I'm like, everyone's strong in their own way. And by the way, we need to not be slapping people.
Well, in Aiden's defense, that her rear end was just, shoulder height. So he just swung at her. I don't think
Oh yeah, no, he wasn't looking for certain real estate. He was just like, come on, go faster.
Why are you walking?
So yeah, and I wanted to tie it around too, Linz, because you and I did Santa Rosa this year, and about, I would say it's like almost 2 years ago, I kind of hit, because with especially bipolar, you can go up and down. It's kind of managing it. And I hit a low, and it was just a very hard time for me, and I was really white knuckling it. And I will not confide this into anybody, because I'm like, I can, whether they know it or not, my team is there for me, but it's a hard thing because I think I can handle it. And and I realized how important my tribe was. I confided into two individuals at the time, who I completely respect, admire, like full of zest people. Then you came right after, same qualities, and they didn't judge me. And, you know, and as a matter of fact, it deepened relationships. And,
Right.
you know, when I sort of like got back to the team and everyone's talking about doing Santa Rosa, I'm like, these are my people, like, and I need to talk with them more. And it's not just about getting the great photo for Instagram on the bikes, but like, so it's taking me a while. There's still like gems in my life who I would love to talk to, but it's a hard timing. Like, when do you, it's hard to bring up, right? I only want to.
So, hey, I want to tell you something. I've got some issues you may not be aware of.
Right. And, you know, it's like still kind of not as universally accepted. I think we're getting better with it. And I know, you know, all of my family is like so supportive, and both Paul, my husband, and mom have said, like, this isn't our story to tell, but if you share it, like, you're going to impact lives in a positive way. So,
I mean, it's true. You and I have had some great runs and rides where we've been able to share with each other, not just our past stories about this, but like current, you know, things, challenges. And yeah, I mean, you were one of the people I talked with quite a bit after Ironman, when I got after Santa Rosa, just this summer, like got into a pretty deep depression, and had to seek additional solutions that I haven't had to have before, in terms of medication and stuff to cope with depression. And it was so nice for me to have someone I already knew, like, who's in my tribe, who I knew I could talk to. And you know, it's like, I could just be like, I'm struggling, I'm depressed. I've never felt like this before. This is a new one for me. And, you know, and to be able to have that foundation we've already kind of shared with each other, so that I had some place to turn, is super, super important. And it's a huge factor in my continuing health and happiness.
Absolutely. And I think both you and I tend to, and I think you gotta, when you get into the trenches, is that sense of humor. I mean, it gets you so far. And I know, like, when I was sort of suddenly taken out of, you know, out of workforce, and kind of like in this inpatient, outpatient thing. And it's like things that I had suppressed for many years, like painful things, they kind of come up, because you're like, all I'm doing is therapy. But then you, like, once you connect with people that are doing well and kind of like surviving, and you're helping them along the stages, I don't know, the humor, just you need to laugh. Like, at the end of the day, it's, you know, it really helps. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's like, on the one hand, mental health issues are very serious and can really, really, you know, ruin a person's life to a certain degree. On the other hand, part of, like, for me anyway, part of being in good mental, like, there's a bunch of things I do for maintenance, but one of the things that's important is for me to not take myself too seriously, or it can get, you know, Mike and I have talked about that, I think, before on the podcast too. It's like, someone who's got alcoholism, you know, even if they're sober for many years like myself, it's like, if I take myself too seriously, that is actually me going down a pathway towards my mental illness. Not that everything's a joke in life, but just that, like, I got to get over myself. Otherwise it's, you know, and so for me, humor is like one of my maintenance tools. And to just be able to laugh at the situation of, like, and just say, like, Heidi, I'm just laying on the couch eating. Like, that's all I'm doing right now. Like, and I need to get some help with that, because all I'm doing is laying here, and I have no freaking, you know, to be able to say that is, because then it kind of, like, when I was able to say that to you, then it was like, oh, what actions are you going to take, you know, to get off the couch? Because when you say it out loud, you go, well, that's not how I want to live, you know?
Right. So when I look back in my high functioning group, there was a Nike executive, and there's definitely like this confidentiality around the group, right? I don't think I'd never Googled him after, like, the meeting and stuff, but I think he was dealing with anxiety, probably some other things. And now my favorite running shoe is the Nike Wild Horse. So I'm like, I wonder if I Google him, if I could be like, hey, remember me? I'm a runner now. Like, I was talking to you about this trauma, this diagnosis, but check me out.
And I'm using your products.
Yeah. So, but you do, like, people in the community, you can really connect with.
Yes. And just like that concept that we just talked about of like our team, watching other members of our team do, different races, different distance races, makes it more accessible for us. I feel like talking with people I know also struggle with some mental illness, like that's also part of my tribe. And it's the same kind of thing. It's like, oh, you can have a sense of humor about this, and you can move forward with your life using these tools. Like, oh, that makes it okay for me too. It takes some of the power out of the mental illness. If you're like, oh, I'm just part of a group and we all kind of struggle with this, and it's not a shameful thing that I need to hide in a closet and pretend isn't there,
Yes.
And it just dissipates by just taking that action of being like open about it to a certain degree,
Yes. And on the subject of relationships too, I think that, we get kind of nervous to tell this person or that person because they're not in that particular circle or group that we can relate to. And honestly, and that was one of the big things that, when you had asked me to come on and talk about my why, and I was like, I need to talk about this because frankly, I don't really care anymore, especially like the people that don't accept you, like that's a piece of you, and it fuels and it fires you. And if they don't, who cares? And more important, it wasn't until like I had talked to you and a couple other people that I really look up to, and they were so just accepting of me and listen to me. And I'm like, these are the coolest people I know. And if they're like Team Heidi, then who that I know we're not swearing, but like who, it doesn't matter, like those relationships will fade away, and it's probably for the better.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, I don't run to like my boss and be like, hey, guess what? I'm a sober alcoholic. I mean, because, but if they find out at the same time, I don't care. But it is, you're right. Like the people that I respect the most are the people who embrace their own challenges and are like, this is me and this is what I'm doing. And I'm, you know what I mean? And I'm living the most rad life I can. And I have challenges. The idea, like putting out perfectionism out there, putting out that really facade of like everything's perfect, to me is not something that I gravitate towards anymore, because I realize like that's not the real human experience, and I want authentic people in my life. So if you have an issue with me being authentic, then you can go away. That's fine. Cause I have like people like you in my life who are okay with me being me. And it's so much easier and less, like my self-esteem issues are lessened by me just, embracing who I am and letting it be, and having people in my community who embrace me as I am, as opposed to me being like, I got to hide everything from everybody. Cause that just brings shame.
Yes. And in our community, I would say the majority, if not all, like everybody is racing for their own purpose, but they are such a cool community because, for the most part, they'll help you out like in transition and, give you goggles because you forgot yours and they've got extra. And there's a lot of just positivity and love. And the finish line is just such a cool place to cheer for people, like, no matter what, if you finish your race, or like there's family out there. So I think that's connecting to the endurance community. It really does fuel my why, like why I want to be around these people. Like they're setting the bar. But it's also nice to know and realize that people have ups and downs that do go beyond Instagram. Right. So
yeah, and it's true. And the triathlon community in general is so amazing. If I feel like the more challenges you overcome to go get through your race, the more love you get. You know what I mean? Like, yes, we like our pros that are killing it and they're fast, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's amazing to see them on the course, because they're going at a pace that I can't even fathom. But when I see those people that are just like, have overcome massive physical, mental, emotional, whatever struggles to get to that finish line, like that's where I'm like so inspired, and you can feel, it from everyone else in the community. And I think that's like my favorite part about triathlon.
Because you can watch two people doing the same race or challenge, and you can see someone who may finish faster, but sometimes the heart of the underdog or the person behind them is just, it blows your mind, and you can feel more connected and impressed.
Yes.
So I think that's so important. And like you said, seeing other people doing things is inspiring. I think one of my just end goals is to kind of like, where did I fail? Where did I excel? Why shouldn't I take myself seriously? Like you said, and like, where is that going to take me? And then in you come with David Goggins' book. And man, that just, So listening to his story, if you haven't, everyone, I know he's on Ritual Podcast. Lindsay bought me the book. Listen to it, not with your kids in the car.
Listen to the audio instead of reading it's fine, but the audio has extra and it's amazing, but it is explicit for sure.
Yes. And I bring him up because I think that's at a place where I am now, where like, hey, I've added the tribe community to my toolbox, like a deeper version of that. And I have David Goggins on my mind, and I'm like, I'm just setting these goals. A couple lotteries I'm putting in. But it's not about being like him. It's being like myself, but kind of taking the history and like the motivation. And so I'm just looking forward to kind of whatever that brings.
I love him for that reason, because he's like, this is what I'm doing, but I'm not telling you to do what I'm doing. I'm telling you to do what you do, but do it to your fullest and your best. And don't be, weak about pursuing your own life. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, same thing. It's like, just be ruthless in pursuing my own best life, not to the degree that I don't care about other people, because caring about other people is part of me living my best life, but being sort of like, I'm going to friggin' do the thing. I'm going to do the race and do the job and do the whatever I got going on, and deal with my kids. And, I'm just going to do that because this is how I live my best life. On the flip side, self-care is important for me because I have challenges. But it's like, do everything. I love that. I love stuff, and so my teammates are so inspiring. So that, Liz, is kind of the third thing we've been talking about a little bit. You said your third why is love based.
Yeah. So I kind of touched on that within the triathlon space. I think for me, a big part of my why is I had a lesson in human compassion. I've always felt like not a little bit, but I've always felt kind to people. But I think going through my own illness struggles and management and going through the sport, I feel like we just got to put more love out there. There's so much that is negative, and I feel like, watching Mike do the race and putting out love for the family. Like, I want to put love to my green ribbon community, but I also want to give love out there and just put out good in the universe. And so, so that's like a big part for me.
Yeah, that I feel the same way. And I know Mike does too. For me, it's partially on the sober end of like, life is, you can have a completely different life, sober, but also for women of color, endurance sports, I think that's obviously in the marathon, like on pro level, you see a lot of African Americans, but in triathlon, for example, in the sport, there's not a whole lot of my peeps. I think there's one pro who's African American.
Yes.
And so we're not talking about a lot of faces out there. And so I get that, because this is a community I think anyone can benefit from participating in. So putting that love out there is huge. And then love for the teammates. Like, I feel the love when I'm like with you guys doing stuff, I felt a lot like I was way after everybody else coming into the finish line at Santa Rosa, and all my teammates were standing there.
Yeah. And, I had mentioned to you that while a lot, like the majority, I think, of the team, isn't aware of sort of my full health history, but it's like, seeing those cheers, and even, just people that I've known through the years that have been such a big like cheerleader, it's so amazing, isn't it? It's like you can really feel the love that they're giving you, whether they know it or not. So yeah, I think that's very powerful.
It's awesome. It's the best. So we should probably wrap up soon, but I wanted to just kind of hear, do you have plans yet for 2020 in terms of endurance sports? Like, what are you doing, or do you not know yet?
I got a couple of things. So I cleared 2 of them with my husband because they require travel, international travel. I won't disclose exactly what they are, but my like close crew, like you kind of know, but I'm putting in for 2 international extreme triathlons.
Yay.
Hoping to get into either. If I get into both, then I'm going to really need to hit up Team Sheeper for a plan. And then I'm looking, and me and you will ping each other about different races, but I'm looking at doing 100K. So I'm looking at we'll connect on the side, but I'm looking at doing the Ordnance 100K. So that I think is February 1st or Jan. It's like right at the beginning, I think.
Beginning of the year. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So it's more beginning of the year because I like to have things, and you guys had talked about it on the air, but my 37th birthday, I celebrated with a 37-mile run. And so I'm already asking my husband if he can pick me up in Sausalito next year, or Tiburon, because I just would have to like clear the route. But yeah, we're looking at 38 now. Oh
my gosh. Amazing. Well, I want to come out and run part of that with you. So for sure. Longer than I did this year. This year was like 2 miles, and I was like, all right, I'm good. But I'd like to do a little bit longer with you in 2020. Well, that's great. I'm going to be doing some endurance. Some trail running, as you know, in 2020. So I'm looking forward to doing a bunch of those with you. And in fact, we're doing one this weekend. It won't be
Saturday.
Yes. And actually this podcast will be coming out, I think, after we've already done it. But you're going to be going at a much faster pace than me, but I'm super excited to learn new trails. And it looks like we're going to be running through a new open space preserve that hasn't been open to the public before. So that's going to be awesome too.
That'll be so great. Yeah.
Will you quickly share with the listener your recent wildlife encounter on the trail?
I was going to add at the end of that, Lindsay, I hope we don't see any pumas.
Yeah.
I actually had an encounter a couple months ago or several weeks ago where I was running at a local ridge preserve, and it's a normal, like this little route that I take. And I was coming about 2 miles into the course when I turned a corner, and there was a adult female mountain lion, which was about as big as my dog, who wasn't really like looking towards me, because I think I may have, reacted a little different, but she was faced, and we still, I don't know how many 100 yards or so we had between us, but I sort of like quietly went around the corner and just inside thinking, they can run 40 to 50 miles an hour. So my strategy isn't going to be to run away from it.
Right.
So I kind of like made my way, and then this is going to sound like so bad, but I was like, all I need to get is closer to a slow person. like if you're swimming in the bay and there's sharks, you're like, I got to hustle. So about a mile down, I saw this guy, and I felt the need to, he was hiking with a pole, and I was like, sir, just so you know, there's a mountain lion up there. And he said, oh, goody. And I said, well, this could be a match made, because then I hauled it. And my friends joke on Strava that I had like this PR because I hauled it back to the car.
So all these badges on Strava for all your segments.
It's the Puma badge. So yeah.
I love that. I mean, we're just human, right? At the end of the day, it's like, if there's a Puma, I got to find a slow guy with poles and get past him, because, that's how we survive.
And I had immediately thought of my son, and I was like cursing myself inside, like, why are you out here? Like, he's not going to have a mom if you get like attacked by this mountain lion. So It wasn't about the slower human. It was about protecting my son. So
Yes, that's right. Absolutely.
and I reported to the proper authorities, so they know it was there.
Oh my gosh.
But Linz, if I could just also close out and say, like, if you have listened to any part of my story and can connect to it, feel free to email me or reach out to me, Ultra Heidi on Instagram. I don't have all the solutions, but if there's just like a part where I can be of help, like I'm totally into it. And
Absolutely.
one of the things, I would say one of the things that really stuck with me is the way that you look at what's handed to you. And when I had the manic episode, my dad said, "It's okay, Heidi." He's like, "You're so full of life that you just overflowed." And
exactly.
I did, but I tend to try to keep it at sea level or pool level. So
it could be full, but let's just not overflow it if we can avoid it. I'm going to put information, links to your Instagram and stuff in the show notes. So anyone listening who's interested can just click through and get to Heidi that way pretty easily.
Sure.
Thanks so much for coming on, Heidi. And I'll see you on the trails this weekend.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. See ya. Bye.
Bye, Age Groupies.
Alrighty, that concludes today's episode of the Age Groupies podcast with me, Lindsay Hyken, and my co-host, Mike Ergo. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can follow the show on Instagram at Age Groupies, join our Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name, Lindsay Hyken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have questions, comments, or topic ideas, feel free to email us at agegroupies@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, as this really helps us get more exposure while we try to grow this little venture. And of course, if you have friends you think might like the show, please be sure to share it with them. But for now, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week.